Hi, so welcome back to our series History Optional Demystifies. Let us continue with the process. So, we'll be discussing mostly about syllabus, trend, PYQ as well as the sources. So, now we have already reached the seventh part of world history. The seventh part of world history includes world wars, which includes first and second world wars as total wars. So, all of you need to understand the concept of total war. Societal implication, what was the impact on societies, okay, of the whole world. World War I causes and consequences, World War II causes and consequences. So as you can see, the syllabus is not too much focusing on the course of world wars. It is mostly focusing on the causes and consequences and the overall character of these wars as total wars. That is something which we need to understand. If we see the trend, so World War I के ऊपर roughly 6 questions आए हैं आज तक. डायरेक्ट जो क्वेश्चन है, peace treaties which belongs to the interwar period, right? So peace treaties में roughly 12 questions, and most importantly being the Treaty of Versailles. League of Nations, this was the institution which was created after the First World War. So around 5 questions have come here. Between World War I and World War II, we have had around 17 questions. And finally, World War II specific, there are around 7 questions. Let us try to understand them one after the other. So overall, there are 47 questions, which is humongous. So if you see World War I, there are many ways in which war of 1914 to 1918 was unprecedented and in human history entirely novel. Critically examine. Now this is a statement which comes from David Thompson. David Thompson is a very important historian for world history. So उनकी statement है, so we have to understand what was the unprecedented nature of this conflict. Okay, we see the participation of the countries, the theaters of conflict, the destruction which eventually came as a result of this, and why it was novel in nature in human history. Why was the First World War termed as the first total war in modern history? Right, so the concept of total war, it comes from General Ludendorff from Germany, who gives this concept and outlines 4 to 5 features with respect to this, like all the people from the nation, they participate directly or indirectly, right? Second, he talks about the war of attrition, there are long drawn warfare, and eventually one side is going to win effectively and one is going to lose. So such topics like this requires very good conceptual clarity. Number 3, the Berlin Congress failed to unlock the Eastern question, though there was no major war, okay, for next 3 decades after Treaty of Berlin, it contained the seeds of many future wars. So if we see the overall fight between Serbia and Austria, its root causes, it comes from this Berlin Congress, right? Because here Bosnia and Herzegovina, it was kept under the nominal governance of Austria. However, it was under the territorial control of Ottoman Empire. But in 1908, this was annexed by Austria, to which Serbia was always like feeling cheated. It wanted an international conference which did not happen, and eventually this was the spark which was going to lead to the First World War. Then how far is it correct to say that First World War was fought essentially for the preservation of balance of power? Now, balance of power, it's a very important concept that goes all the way up to the Congress of Vienna, which the concept which was trying to ensure peace in Europe. So we have to see how this creation of alliances from 1870s onward and the creation of the second triple entente, dual alliance was created first, then comes the part of the triple entente by 1907. So how do we see, can preservation of balance of power be considered as one of the reason for the beginning of the First World War? Then a very broad question, any single explanation for the outbreak of First World War is likely to be too simple. An amalgamation of factor, right, and means a mixture of factor, intellectual, social, economic, political, diplomatic, all of them, they contributed to this horrifying conflict of monumental propositions, right? If you see the impact, more than half of the humanity, it was directly linked to this war. By 1914, the sick man, this is again one more concept, sick man. Initially the sick man was Turkey, but by 1914 the sick man of Europe was no longer just Turkey, it was Europe itself. Explain. So we have to understand all these nuances with respect to First World War, its causes, its character, and if we are able to understand them, then eventually we can write very good answers. Then peace treaties, Treaty of Versailles, it dominates. Okay, ये पढ़ना ही पढ़ना है, अच्छे से पढ़ना है. Like you can see in 2023 mains also, Treaty of Versailles contain in itself the seeds of Second World War. Examine. Before this is a mixture of two major events in the German history. The first is about the unification. The second again is the day of the signing of Treaty of Versailles. 18 Jan was the day of triumph of the strength and pride of Germany, and 28 June 1919 was the day of chastisement. Critically examine. Do you agree with the view that the Treaty of Versailles was a bad compromise between a treaty based upon force and treaty based upon ideas? The Peace of Versailles lacked moral validity from the start. There was not only a difference of principle at Paris, but also a clash of personality. So we have to understand all those people who participated in this, okay, including Woodrow Wilson, Lloyd George. So what was their personality eventually? A clever conqueror will always impose his demand on the conquered by the installment. And finally, the Treaty of Versailles contained the seeds of future conflicts. Comment. यही क्वेश्चन आपका रिपीट हुआ है 2023 में. So questions do get repeated from these topics because area देखो limited है ना, ऐसा तो है नहीं कि unlimited questions आएंगे यहाँ से. The most important single factor in the years following 1990 was the French demand for security. Provisions of Treaty of Versailles examined the validity. It was merely an armistice for 20 years. Treaties made at Paris Peace Conference were replete with unstable compromises reflecting more materialism than idealism, right? And lastly, the international situation that confronted the peacemakers in Paris was in brutal realities of history the result of temporary redistribution of balance of power in the world. So if we see the balance of power shifted with German unification in 1871, and this unification was going to have a very large impact on the next level of international politics. It happened within 50 years. If we see, the whole equation again changed, and by 1919 again Germany was bound to become a weaker nation because treaties were imposed upon it. It had to also pay war reparations. Then League of Nations, they've asked few questions about it, how the effectiveness of the League of Nations to prevent or to check Japanese aggression against China was the first serious blow to its prestige as an agency for providing security. So created by 1919, and in 1931 the invasion, when it happened, the Manchuria, that thereafter every dictator started going outside the phase of League of Nations. League of Nations is a league of notions, right? हर किसी का अपना एक perspective था इसके towards, and which eventually did not last, है ना? The Communist International and the League of Nations both announced the end of balance of power. The Manchurian crisis decided the fate of League of Nations. Thus, the League sought to achieve to the profoundest of all psychological revolution, to transform the war mentality of men into a peace mentality. Comment. So, the First World War, when it was getting fought, हर किसी का एक ही ओपिनियन था कि भाई बड़ा वॉर करते हैं और ख़त्म करते हैं छोटे मोटे वॉर जो हर 1-2 साल में चलते रहते हैं. But eventually, these people of Europe were now required to understand that war is not a solution, right? So, changing this psychological ability of humankind was the biggest challenge in front of League of Nations, which eventually it failed. Then, if you see the world between the two world wars, roaring 20s in Europe and America had many positive points. It helped women to uplift themselves in the region. Europe was at war with itself in the first half of the 20th century with a long ceasefire. So it's a combination of First World War and Second World War. In the long run, the Locarno Treaty was destructive both of Treaty of Versailles and of the Covenant. The war was permanent contribution, was the spirit, or to the post-war era was disillusion. So First World War, its impact was disillusion, with people eventually, when they lose their family, when they lose their houses, when they lose the whole generational wealth accumulated over a number of generations, eventually they lose faith in life, they lose faith in God, they lose faith in anything. So that is what is the serious impact of the First World War, disillusion. And the Great Depression was attended by momentous consequences in the economic as well as in the political sphere, how it led to the rise of dictatorship throughout the world. Rise and growth of new European society in the interwar period, trace the growth of militarism in Japan in the interwar years, then the New Deal of Frank Roosevelt, the Great Depression. अब ये जो टॉपिक्स हैं ये इतना ज़्यादा अपने सिलेबस में डायरेक्टली अभी है नहीं, तो इनको आप चाहो तो स्किप कर सकते हो. सिर्फ ब्रॉड आइडिया आपको लेकिन इनका होना चाहिए. The country in the Middle East became after 1918 the scene of constant effervescence and some striking changes. So the rise of Arab nationalism, okay, being the direct impact of this First World War. The perpetuation of the economic malaise was the main cause of the political instability of Europe during the next 2 decades, as we see from 1990 to 1939. The how Spanish Civil War was a prelude to Second World War. So we have to understand how it foreshadowed system of alliances, new weapons, warfare. All of that was very linked to this. New Deal, same question. What led to the formation of Berlin, Rome, Tokyo axis? What was its impact on international politics? Japanese policy with respect to Manchuria. And finally, the rise and growth of militarism in Japan. Then if we see World War II, do you agree with the statement that World War II was history's most destructive war? So again, it's about the consequences, right? Syllabus से direct निकल के आते हैं ऐसे क्वेश्चन. तो आपको भी ये समझना चाहिए कि जितना अच्छे से आप सिलेबस को कवर करोगे, ऐसे क्वेश्चन में दिक्कत नहीं आने वाली है. Was Czechoslovakia served on a dish to Hitler at Munich? What were its implications? So again we have to understand this Munich Pact and how it eventually led to the problem. Then next, until it's about the course of the second world war है ना, तो बहुत ही बेसिक चीज़ पूछी गई है आपकी. Till December 1941 the whole war it was mostly your Atlantic in nature, right? So the battlefield of the second world war was exclusively European and Atlantic. Thereafter it became Asiatic and Pacific because Japan entered, and with Japan we also see the coming of USA. Hitler did not really want a world war. His intention was only short war with Poland. So this is one specific, you can say, comment from AJP Taylor, a bit controversial also. All right, but we have to understand the historiography with respect to this. One of the main impact of the Second World War, it was division of Europe. Until December 1941, the battlefield of the Second World War was exclusive European and Atlantic. Thereafter, it also became Asiatic and Pacific. Same question is getting repeated. And finally, one of the most important impacts of Second World War, it was a division of Europe, Eastern and Western. If we see the sources, तो sources का बात करेंगे तो एक बुक आपकी predominant है, which we have been following from the beginning itself. It is your रंजन चक्रवर्ती. चैप्टर नंबर 8 आपका फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर पे है, causes, consequences अच्छे से इसमें दिए हुए हैं, हिस्टोग्राफी भी अच्छे से कवर्ड है. Then second world war, the causes of the second world war, they are given in the chapter number 13. Then आप चाहो तो इस वाले एरिया के लिए नॉर्मन लू भी फॉलो कर सकते हो. इट इज़ एन इक्वली गुड बुक एंड इनफैक्ट अगर आप डिबेट्स की बात करोगे तो नॉर्मन लू इज़ बेटर देन रंजन चक्रवर्ती विद रिस्पेक्ट टू वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 एंड वर्ल्ड वॉर 2. तो आप चाहो तो इस बुक को भी फॉलो कर सकते हो, दोनों में से कोई एक कर लो. मेरा एम यही रहेगा आपको बताना कि दोनों बुक ठीक है, लेकिन ये ज़्यादा अच्छी है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू पर्सपेक्टिव. बट सेम चीज़ ज़्यादा अच्छी है तो मतलब बल की तो है ही साथ के साथ में. तो आपसे जो जल्दी डाइजेस्ट हो सकता है उसको आप फॉलो कर लो. तो यहाँ पे आप अगर टॉपिक देखो ऑरिजिन ऑफ फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर, तो ये दिया हुआ है आपको चैप्टर नंबर 1 में. 3 में बिटर पीस है ना, तो कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज, देन रोड टू वॉर, कॉजेज एंड फाइनली सेकंड वर्ल्ड वॉर एंड इट्स कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज दर गिवन. तो स्टार्टिंग के 4-5 चैप्टर्स में आपका दोनों ये टॉपिक कवर हो जाएंगे. चॉइस आप लोगों के पास है, मेरी तरफ से आपको मैंने आपको समझा दिया. ठीक है ना. If you want mentorship from us, right? So what you need to do, आप रजिस्टर कर लीजिए डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स में. स्ट्रेटेजिक डॉक्यूमेंट्स वगैरह आपको उसके साथ में मिल जाएंगे. Then second, you have to follow all these videos which are coming on YouTube. In fact, we are coming up with a very important series with respect to NCERT. So you are going to love it. So उसके लिए भी आप रजिस्टर कर सकते हो. And finally, read the prescribed books. If you are doing self study, अगर खुद से करने का मन है तो बुक्स आपको ये पढ़नी पड़ेंगी. But if you want to become part of our foundation course, you can register for that also because it is also going to start from 1st of April. So all the very best. Okay, अगर आपको कोई भी डाउट है of any kind, you can just call on these numbers and keep subscribing to our YouTube channel अगर आपने नहीं किया अभी तक, so that all these good videos can reach you on time and eventually आपकी जो सिविल सर्विसेज की जर्नी है it can get eventually fine tuned और time to time आपको साथ में mentorship भी मिलती रहे. So all the very best and take care.